already at the last topic for today. Our last speaker for today is Andrew Morris, founder and chief architect at GreyNoise. Andrew is the brilliant mind behind GreyNoise, where he serves as the founder and chief architect. With his deep expertise in cybersecurity and a knack for innovative solutions, Andrew has been instrumental in identifying and mitigating vulnerabilities in edge devices. Edge devices, that's the keyword. His work has helped countless organizations understand and defend against the threats posed by these critical components of our digital infrastructure. Today, Andrew will tackle the big, hairy edge device problem. What a title. Discussing how vulnerabilities in edge devices are exploited by state actors to gain access to systems. He'll share some recent war stories of edge device vulnerabilities and offer possible solutions to ever-evolving challenges. And remember, folks, in the world of cybersecurity, Andrew is like the Sherlock Holmes of edge devices, always one step ahead of the bad guys. So let's give a warm welcome to Andrew, who will guide us through the latest in edge device security. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks so much. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm excited to share this with you. Although I'm definitely not going to solve the problem. That's how I'm gonna. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I will certainly not be providing a complete solution to the problem. Let me just share my screen. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, hey, everybody, my name is Andrew Morris. I'm the founder and chief architect at a company called GreyNoise Intelligence. And I'm not going to really talk about GreyNoise almost at all in this entire presentation. But just for context, at GreyNoise, we operate a really big sensor network on the internet of lots and lots and lots of fake edge devices and sometimes real edge devices. And when I talk about edge devices in this talk, I'm really referring to anything that runs typically on the internet edge. So that's going to be, routers and, cameras and so IP, things like NASs and things like that. But anyways, this is me. And let's fast forward to right now. Hey, everybody, great news. Attackers are no longer seeing as much success attacking end users anymore. It's great. We did it. We did it, gang. Cybersecurity is fixed. Everybody's got multi-factor authentication. Microsoft cares about security in Windows operating system. EDR detects absolutely everything. We did it, gang. Pack it up and go home. And this is not true. I'm kind of joking, but this is true to an extent, right? This year, relative to probably the last, 15 years in particular, we are actually seeing that attackers are seeing less success going after end users, right? And there used to be a lot of sort of jokes about this in the security industry and amongst security practitioners, that it was really, really hard to secure networks and organizations because of the users, because users are clicking stuff and because they've got bad passwords and because they'll type their passwords into anything and all this kind of stuff. And that's definitely true. That's not stopped. But email security has actually noticeably improved. There are good multi-factor authentication solutions that people can use. Microsoft has really, really improved the security of Windows operating system. Windows used to be really insecure up to about XP and Vista, and then they started actually investing a tremendous amount of money in making Windows hard to exploit and hard to operate on. And my background is in offense, so I used to do this, and I can tell you, Windows, you guys know, Windows used to be really easy to operate on as an attacker, and it isn't anymore. And so back in the day, call it in the 90s and in the 2000s, it was popular to compromise devices on the perimeter, to get a shell on devices in the perimeter. And then it wasn't as popular anymore for a period of time. That's not because it ever left being out of vogue, so to speak. That's because of what I sort of call this, this notion of diffusion. The reason why we are seeing a tremendous amount of attacks against edge devices is not because edge devices like routers and embedded systems and security gateways and VPNs and cameras and all these things. It's not because they got worse. It's because the security architecture and the mitigating controls from the endpoint got better. And so as a result of it being harder to attack users, attackers were seeing a massive amount of attackers going against edge devices because of diffusion, is kind of how I think about it. We are seeing an unprecedented amount of attacks and breaches against edge devices. This is a problem. This is really bad. Edge devices generally run embedded systems for a host of reasons. I'm going to give a few examples on why edge devices are so appealing to attackers. And I think most of the people in here are probably going to know, but edge devices are running old operating systems or old insecure firmware. These devices often run, they go end of life. They run out of their support, but they stay online. There's really no pressure to keep them up. They really don't have ways to be automatically updated, which means they stay vulnerable on the internet forever, a lot of the time. And they're in the Stone Age. Not even the most basic security features exist in a lot of these devices on the internet. And I've always found it funny how much effort and energy and time we as a technology community have put into securing workstations and endpoints, but we've really, really neglected the security of these edge devices. And so that is getting really bad now. It's becoming apparent how important the security of edge devices are, because lots of breaches are happening as a result of embedded systems. This is not good. And as you will see throughout my talk, I do not have any answers for you. So I want to talk a little bit about why attackers like edge devices so much. There's so many bugs in them. There are so many bugs. It's so common for vulnerabilities to be discovered in edge devices and then to be easily weaponized. It really is kind of like a blast from the past. Edge devices are very commonly facing the internet, right? A lot of the time, they're not behind the NAT or behind firewalls. They are just directly routable on the internet. And there are hundreds of companies and technologies that index where all of them are all the time, like Census and Shodan and all of the others. There's countless of them. Edge devices typically have high uptime, which means they go many, many days and many, many months, and sometimes many years without being rebooted. And if I were an attacker and I wanted to have a backdoor that lived in memory, that's the place where I would want to put them, because I know that they're not going to be rebooted. If you did want to put an EDR device or an EDR product on your routers or on your IP cameras or whatever to protect them, you can't. You can't do that. There is no EDR. I'm scaring my dog. There is no EDR for embedded systems. You cannot put CrowdStrike on a router. You cannot put Microsoft Defender on your IP camera or on your NAS. And very often they don't actually provide any kind of useful telemetry. So if I were an attacker, of course I would go after edge devices. There's so many more reasons why. One thing that is really valuable as an attacker to be in between your targets and the internet, to actually be passing the traffic back and forth, because you can sniff credentials between them. You can redirect users to malicious websites or to other crazy places. VPN VPNs are often protecting more sensitive assets, right? So if I compromise a security gateway or a VPN or something like that, there's a good chance as an attacker that there are more valuable systems behind it. And if I've compromised a tremendous amount of edge devices, I can move my attacks through all of them, like a giant proxy network, right? Like my own little Tor. And I don't have to use reverse shells necessarily, that maintain, connections for my command and control. Edge devices are already on the network. I can use bind shells, just like it's 1999, baby. And some attackers actually are doing things even sneakier than this, like using magic packets, right? Magic packets being backdoors that sit there. They don't listen on any ports or anything like that. They just look for packets that have a certain string of bytes in their header data, and then they read those bytes and they send a shell back out to somebody. VPN filter was the first example of this that I remember, that the Russians used. But we're seeing more and more attackers that are adopting Tradecraft like this, including some others. So these are some of the reasons why attackers like edge devices. The first sort of big sign that this was going to be bad was Mirai. And it still is Mirai to this day. In GreyNoise, I did a quick search. We know about 800,000 Mirai infections just over the last 3 months. And Mirai was a botnet, and still is a botnet that uses or it's a set of botnets now that uses very, very simple mechanisms to spread guessable credentials, and, a small number of exploits. And it was used in the largest DDoS attack at the time that took down, like half the internet in 2016. These are some of the devices that attackers are going after. Funny enough, they are often security devices, which is very ironic to me. Attackers are going after, Avanti and Pulse Secure. They're going after Palo Alto devices, Cisco ASAs, Fortinets. None of these are. I'm not here to rip on any of these vendors. They're all doing their best, and they're all being attacked by different groups of attackers. The Chinese, in particular, are seeing a lot of success with going after edge devices in the soft, squishy center of the internet. I listed a handful of breaches that occurred as a result of compromised edge devices, but the list is very, very long. There are lots of organizations that are getting compromised as a result of vulnerable edge devices. So this is rough. I have a small number of examples right here, between Singapore's, national internet service provider, MITRE in the United States, or the United States electric grid, right? Just little things like that. Actually, one of the best reports that I have seen out there was Sophos's Pacific Rim report. This was a really, really, really good deep dive on attacker tradecraft. The Sophos team spent many years actually tracking a China-based threat actor by doing some really, really clever stuff. And a fun little tidbit is that this attack actually started from a smart TV, a compromised smart TV. And so I don't know if that really is considered an edge device, because that really shouldn't be sitting on the perimeter. But alas, it was compromised regardless, because attackers are compromising edge systems. So at GreyNoise, these are some of the things that we're seeing from attackers who are the types of tradecraft that we're seeing from attackers that are attempting to compromise embedded systems. We are seeing malwareless persistence. So instead of using malware, bringing compiled code and running it on the system, we're actually seeing attackers that are just spawning SSH servers on high ports with hard-coded keys or only accepting a certain public key. We are seeing attackers that are disabling logging and security features once they land and compromise on these routers. We are seeing attacks against routers that are being routed through other compromised routers, which makes it very hard or almost pointless to even try to fingerprint, or rather share where the attacks came from, because it's just going to be another infected router. We are seeing attackers backdooring these routers in certain areas of non-volatile storage, which means that when you update the firmware to these devices, they're still infected. We are seeing attackers compromising routers out of the box by chaining together known vulnerabilities to achieve a full system compromise. Maybe an auth bypass over here, maybe a user enumeration over here, maybe a local file inclusion over here. All of these things together can be chained for a full system compromise. And then once attackers are on these routers, we are seeing them do things like attempting to sniff credentials. Oftentimes, these routers don't do proper certificate pinning and things like that. So yeah, attackers are able to see all kinds of stuff that goes to and from routers. So how bad is it? It's pretty bad. The vulnerabilities are coming out, being disclosed at a staggering rate. I have not seen software vulnerabilities be exploited, or rather be disclosed and exploited this quickly in my life. The sort of average time to exploit, so the amount of time in between software vulnerabilities being disclosed and being exploited, has dropped to almost zero. That means that once the vulnerabilities are disclosed, we are actually seeing exploitation of them in our giant sensor network at scale very, very, very quickly. Sometimes even before. There's a lot of these devices that are just sitting out on the internet. I don't have a count of how many edge devices there are sitting out on the internet, but it's a very large number. You can look at Census or Shodan to get a picture of it, but there are hundreds of thousands of extremely vulnerable devices that are just sitting around, and more of them are being added every day, because sometimes you can just go to the store. In the United States, we have Best Buy. You can go to Best Buy. You can buy a brand new router from there. You can plug it into the wall, and it might be vulnerable to compromise out of the box. And then even if it does auto patch, if it was compromised but prior to being patched, then it will be backdoored, and it will stay backdoored even after reboots. And as I mentioned before, pretty much every device that you can see on the internet is already indexed in a database like Census or Shodan, which means everything is just a simple query away. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to try to shill GreyNoise at all, but I did a really quick search in this, and we see in the last 90 days almost 2 million compromised edge devices that are sitting there on the perimeter. So the problem is pretty bad. It is pretty rough. We are actually also seeing 0 days being burned from mass exploitation campaigns, which is to say, I, as a former attacker, as somebody who used to work in offense, I cannot imagine burning a 0 day by blasting it across the internet or sending them to everybody on the internet. But that is exactly what some attackers are doing. Why are they doing that? Why would they do that? Is it because they want their vulnerability to be burned? Is it because they really don't think defenders are paying attention? It's because they are so easy to find that they don't mind burning them. So in GreyNoise, at the place that I work at, we're starting to see a small but increasing number of 0 days being burned by opportunistic mass exploitation on every couple months. We're seeing another one. We identified one in WatchGuard a couple years ago that was pretty rough. We identified 2 in pan-tilt zoom cameras last year, and very recently we're seeing we identified a 0-day in a popular Soho router just last month that we're still working on getting fixed. A patch came out for it, but unfortunately the patch was quickly bypassed because, as I mentioned, the security of embedded systems is very, very bad. So what do we do? I don't know. I don't know. I do not know. I have a couple of insane ideas. They're completely crazy. But I don't know. I do know that ISPs probably need to keep a heavier hand in keeping internet traffic clean. I don't know much about Europe and the way that European internet service providers are regulated or anything like that. So I can't obviously speak to Europe at all. But in the United States, it's really rare for American internet service providers to take active roles in cleaning and filtering internet traffic, right? Because they don't want to do that. They aren't paid to do that. They are sort of they're paid to move packets, so they will move those packets happily from A to B. When devices, I will also assert that we might want to get into the rhythm as a community of actually kicking devices off the internet or entire parts of the internet off of the internet, null routing things off the internet until they're clean, right? If we know that something is infected and we know that it is spreading malware to other places or something like that, maybe we should kick it off the internet. I don't know. These are crazy ideas. When devices reach end of life, we together as a community should do everything that we can to get them off the internet, including just nuking them out of oblivion. I know that that is rough and harsh, but if we don't do it in a controlled setting, somebody else is going to do it at the worst possible time, or they're going to use it to spy, which I would argue is worse. Manufacturers really need to have auto update mechanisms or at least some kind of remote administration mechanism so that they can fix them remotely. But they can't right now. So we're sort of at the mercy of people taking these devices off. And I do really recommend every government and national security center really actively monitoring their own IP space just to figure out roughly like what kind of devices are running. I'm sure many do already, but I recommend as much of that as possible. And any bad stuff that can be blocked at the national gateway, I do highly recommend. I am aware of one large country off the top of my head that does this with a lot of success, blocking stuff from their national gateways. And devices that are knowingly compromised out of the box shouldn't be allowed to be sold. It should be illegal to sell them, right? Somehow. And everybody needs to get really good at blocking lots of IPs really fast because that's all you can do sometimes. And I know that this is, I don't have more useful answers to you guys, and I'm sorry, but edge device security is a big, hairy problem. I don't have any fix for it. I really don't. I wish that I did. We see the exhaust of it every day at the place that I work at. And there are it's a bad problem. And I wish I had better news for you guys, but I don't. So I would love to take any questions that come up. Thank you for coming to my talk. I really appreciate it.
Okay. We are at the end of Andrew's presentation, and I see that there are no questions for you, Andrew, but that doesn't have to be bad. That's probably because people are already in their data centers patching and doing other stuff after hearing some of your insane ideas. I think that a lot of ISPs will have a late evening meeting today to implement some of your insane ideas. But the good thing is that some of your insane ideas are already implemented by the CCP.
That's great. That's
so
great.
there are people in the world that are at least even insane as you are. So maybe we should talk more about this insane stuff. Anyway, thank you, Andrew, for your unique and captivating presentation on the big hairy H device problem. Presentation style and insightful approach truly kept us glued to our screens. You have provided us with a deeper understanding of this critical issue, and we appreciate your expertise and the willing to share it with us. I think we can conclude, GreyNoise, you make the noise less gray and the insights crystal clear. If you don't know, at least you have insane ideas. Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.